Chapter 48. Stirring of the Nest, early 1940s. Wheat, slang for a person unused to city ways. The clerk called them wheat as they left the hotel lobby. In the 1940 census of household members, we find the following list. Name, age: Riley Harness, 41. Melinda Harness, 38. Troy Harness, 17. Perry Harness, 15. Veda Harness, Dwelth Roy Harness, 10. Reva Harness, Oat James Riley Harness, 6. Nora Bell Harness, 52. Notably missing are Earl and Clifford Harness. Starting with Earl, he was finishing his senior year of high school in Marshall. I wonder if he was even counted in the 1940 census, since he was living at the Lindsay Hotel. At age 20, he was enjoying school, but said that he was just an average student. Besides playing softball and basketball on a casual level, he took an interest in boxing. Americans had taken a real interest in boxing, and none was more popular than Joe Louis. He reigned as the world's heavyweight champion from 1937 to 1949. Earl put on the gloves and found that he could move fairly quick and hit hard. He was able to dominate the other boys he sparred with most of the time. Then one day, an underclassman by the name of Dorsey Steen, who had grown up downstream from Earl on Bear Creek at Canaan, put on the gloves. Dad said he was lightning fast, and he tagged him with a punch, and his vision went black. Earl said he saw stars. As a kid, I didn't know what that meant until I got hit really hard one day, and I, too, saw stars. Dorsey joined the service and won the 7th Fleet Middleweight Boxing Championship, and then won the Golden Gloves Championship in Wichita, Kansas, in 1954. Clifford was the biggest of the boys, but he never attempted boxing to my knowledge. I do remember that he loved to watch wrestling on TV, and I recall times as a child being at his house and him being very engaged watching matches. Clifford was affectionately called Clee by his family, and he had grown to be taller and stronger than any in his family. His size as an adult gave him some advantages with being picked for positions or making a tense situation evaporate by intimidation. Math, especially fractions, was never his strength, but he made up for it with his size and ability to advantage himself when making a deal. Clifford being absent from the 1940 census of the household of Riley Harness was probably a result of him being in Washington State. Clee and Troy had both joined the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, and they had worked in the area of Big Flat, Arkansas, and south of Yellville, Arkansas. But Clee was invited to join a group in Washington State. There were virtually no full-time jobs available for an 18-year-old man in Sussex County. Nearly 3 million young men would serve in the CCCC program during its tenure. Most were under the age of 25 who signed up for a 6-month commitment, up to 2 years total. $1 per day, of which $25 per month went home to parents, and $5 for the enlistee. All food, shelter, and clothing were furnished. The scant population in the Northwest U.S. did not produce enough young men to do all the conservation work needed, so they were recruited from back east. Most made the journey by train. The weather was very cold and snowy where Clee was assigned. They were working out in the snow and mud without proper footwear. Clifford told the other recruits one day that they were going to refuse to work until they were issued overshoes. When they reached the work site and were told to unload, Clee told the supervisor that they would not work until they were fitted with overshoes. When the man sized up Clifford, he got back in the truck and took them back to camp. 2 days later, they were issued overshoes. Many of the young men ran short of money before they got their monthly pay of $5. Clee became a loan shark and offered to loan them $1 for $2 come payday. The old boy from Arkansas was shrewd and knew how to create an opportunity. In time, Clee had all of the CCC he wanted and asked Riley to write him a letter requesting him to come home to help on the farm. It was permissible to be released from service if your family was in dire need of your help. Clee boarded a train and returned to Bear Creek. When Earl graduated from Marshall High School in the spring of 1940, he was 20 years old, and there were no employment opportunities. Clifford came home from Washington and returned to farming with Riley. Soon thereafter, Melinda got a letter from an uncle and aunt, Butler and Margaret Wilbanks Howell. Butler was working as a foreman on the Shasta Dam project in Northern California. In the letter, he told Melinda that if Earl wanted to work under him, he could come out and join the crew. The opportunity to have a good job and to see the West was inviting to Earl. However, there were some risks and fears in attempting such a venture in 1940. Many migrants who had fled the Dust Bowl and depression of the Midwest upon reaching California did not find it to be the land of promise. Most were unable to find good jobs, and the demand for work suppressed wages, causing the locals to resent Midwesterners they called Okies. Those improvised families often lived in camps on the outskirts of the town where disease and crime were rampant. Law officials gave little concerns to their welfare and even tried to keep them out of their territory, advocating that they should go back home. Reports from family and neighbors who had migrated west were circulated in the Ozark Hills and throughout the Midwest about the hardships and difficulties of living in California. While some found a better life by going west, many felt that they had not benefited from the move. For a young man like Earl, who had the prospect of a job in a place where thousands of men stood in line hoping for work, the risk was big for him to consider. While feeling trapped by poverty, maybe the promise outweighed the risk. With little to nothing in his pocket, Earl made plans to go west. While Clifford had gone west with the assurances of transportation and provisions by joining the CRC, Earl had no assurances of anything but the promise of a great uncle who he had never met, only if he could show up for work. Striking out on an adventure is more advantageous to the younger than to the older. Taking risk is more conducive to youth than to the elderly. Reflection. Facing a decision with little to nothing but a promise is something that we all face at times in life. You can read about some men and women listed in the Bible who faced similar circumstances. Hebrews 11. God desires that we walk by faith and believe His promises. All of life is to be about spiritual training and preparedness, if we have eyes to see it. And David said to his son Solomon, "Be strong and of good courage, and do it. Do not fear nor be dismayed, for the Lord God, my God, will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you until you have finished all the work for the service of the house of the Lord." 1 Chronicles 28:20.